Imagine this for a second. You finally did it. Your bank account, after years of trying, side hustling, cutting expenses, watching random finance videos at 2 a.m., finally crosses $10,000. And honestly, it feels incredible. You check the balance more often than you should. Maybe once a day, maybe 10 times. You start thinking things like, okay, maybe I'm actually good with money. Maybe you even start imagining the future a little differently. A nicer apartment, less stress. A version of life where money isn't constantly sitting in the back of your mind like a low battery warning. But then something strange happens. You stop moving, not immediately, not dramatically, it's subtle. You hover somewhere between 10K and 50K for years. Sometimes you climb a little higher, sometimes life knocks you back down. But the big breakthrough, the one where money actually starts compounding, where things begin to feel easier, that moment just never quite arrives. And the weird thing is, this happens to a lot of people. Not when they're broke, not when they're just starting, but right here in this exact range. Now, my name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, how people earn it, how they lose it, and, more importantly, why some people seem to quietly build wealth while others stay stuck at the exact same financial level for decades. And honestly, the 10K to 50K stage is one of the most fascinating parts of that whole journey, because this is where discipline alone stops working. This is where psychology starts to matter more than math. And if you don't understand what's happening during this stage, it's surprisingly easy to get stuck here forever. So today I want to walk through why this happens. Why so many people stall out financially right when they're starting to make progress. And more importantly, what separates the people who break through from the ones who quietly plateau. Because once you see it, you can't really unsee it, and it might completely change the way you think about money. The first illusion, early success. Feels like winning the game when you go from 0 to 10,000. It feels massive, and in many ways, it is. You probably had to change real habits to get there. Maybe you stopped impulse spending. Maybe you started saving automatically. Maybe you picked up a side hustle or negotiated a higher salary. That first 10K represents effort, discipline, proof that you're capable. But here's the tricky part. Your brain interprets that milestone as arrival, not progress. It's like climbing the first hill on a long hike and thinking you've reached the mountain. Suddenly you loosen up. You reward yourself a little more often. You upgrade small things, better phone, nicer dinners, slightly more comfortable lifestyle. None of it feels irresponsible. It feels earned, and honestly, sometimes it is. But wealth building has this strange rule. Early wins create the temptation to relax. And relaxing too early is exactly what keeps people in this range. People who break through this stage usually do something counterintuitive. They treat 10K like the starting line, not the finish line, almost like the game just began. Lifestyle inflation sneaks. In quietly, no one wakes up one day and says, "Today, I will destroy my long-term wealth." That's not how it happens. It happens quietly. You start making a little more money. Maybe your salary jumps from 45K to 60K. Maybe your business finally starts generating consistent income. And suddenly, life gets a little nicer. You move into a slightly better place. You upgrade your car. You start ordering food more often. Again, none of this feels extreme. But lifestyle inflation has this sneaky mathematical effect. Your income goes up 20%, but your spending goes up 25%. So even though you're earning more, your savings rate barely changes. Or worse, it shrinks. Think of it like trying to fill a bathtub while slowly widening the drain. Water goes in, but the level never rises. The people who escape the 10K, 50K trap do something that feels almost boring. They lock their lifestyle for a few extra years. Income rises. Spending stays almost the same. And that difference, that gap, is where wealth starts forming. The middle stage is emotionally awkward. There's something else that makes this stage difficult. You're no longer broke, but you're definitely not rich. You exist in this weird financial middle ground. Your friends might think you're doing well, but you know the truth. 20K, 30K, even 40K in savings still doesn't feel like enough to relax. One job loss, one medical emergency, one bad investment, and suddenly you're back at square one. This creates a strange psychological tension. You start asking yourself questions like, should I take risks? Should I play it safe? Should I invest aggressively or protect what I have? And many people respond to this uncertainty by doing nothing. They leave their money sitting in low-growth places, savings accounts, checking accounts, or worse, no real system at all, because risk suddenly feels scarier once you have something to lose. But ironically, this is exactly the stage where growth matters most. Money needs momentum. Without it, the climb becomes painfully slow. The motivation dip. Nobody talks about. When you start saving money, motivation is high. Everything feels new. Your first $1,000, your first $5,000, your first $10,000. Each milestone feels exciting, but somewhere around 20K or 30K, something strange happens. The milestones stop feeling dramatic. Saving another $5,000 doesn't feel life-changing anymore. It just feels like more numbers. Progress becomes slower emotionally, even if it's faster mathematically, and humans are terrible at long games. We love quick wins. So motivation drops. People loosen their discipline. They skip investing for a few months. They spend a little extra here and there, not dramatically, just enough to stall progress. Breaking through this stage requires something simple but surprisingly rare. Consistency without excitement. Doing the right thing even when it feels boring. Even when no one notices. Even when the numbers move slowly. Most people focus on saving, not earning. Here's another big reason people stall out. They stay in saving mode, which makes sense early on. When you're starting from zero, cutting expenses is powerful. Canceling subscriptions, budgeting, cooking at home, those things create real progress. But eventually, saving hits a ceiling. You can only cut so much. You can't reduce your rent to zero. You can't eat negative groceries. At some point, the real breakthrough comes from earning more. And this is where many people hesitate. Negotiating a salary feels uncomfortable. Starting a side business feels risky. Learning a new skill feels time-consuming, so instead, people stay in the comfort zone of budgeting, while their income stays relatively flat. But wealth rarely grows from extreme frugality alone. It grows from expanding income capacity, better skills, better opportunities, better leverage. The people who move beyond 50K usually shift their focus from how can I save more to how can I become more valuable? The investment fear barrier. Somewhere in this range, another fear appears. Investing starts to feel serious. When you only have $2,000 saved, investing mistakes feel survivable. But when you have $30,000, losing money suddenly feels terrifying. So people hesitate. They wait for the perfect time. They research endlessly. They watch markets. They delay decisions. But time, not timing, is what actually builds wealth. Every year money sits idle is a year. It isn't compounding. And compounding is the real engine of financial growth. Think of money like planting trees. Planting one tree won't change your life tomorrow, but a forest planted early becomes powerful decades later. People who cross the 50K mark usually accept a simple truth. Investing will never feel completely comfortable. But waiting forever is its own risk. Identity becomes the real game at some point. The financial journey stops being about money. It becomes about identity. Are you someone who occasionally saves money, or are you someone who builds wealth consistently? Those are very different identities. One depends on motivation, the other depends on systems, automatic investing, clear financial goals, structured habits. People who break through the 10K, 50K plateau often do something subtle but powerful. They stop treating money like a temporary project and start treating it like part of who they are. just something they do, like brushing their teeth, like showing up to work. No drama, just consistency. Conclusion: the strange thing about the 10K to 50K stage is that it's both encouraging and dangerous at the same time. Encouraging because you've already proven something important. You're capable of saving money, you've built momentum, you've shown discipline. But it's also dangerous because this is where progress can quietly stall. Lifestyle creeps upward, motivation fades, fear of investing grows, income stops expanding, and before you know it, years pass, while your finances sit in roughly the same place. But the good news is, this stage isn't a wall. It's more like a filter, a place where habits, psychology, and long-term thinking start to matter more than quick wins. The people who eventually build real wealth usually pass through this stage by doing a few surprisingly simple things. They delay lifestyle upgrades a little longer. They focus on growing income, not just cutting expenses. They invest consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable. And, maybe most importantly, they accept that building wealth is often quiet, slow, and a little boring in the middle. No dramatic breakthroughs, no overnight transformations, just steady progress, year after year. And honestly, that's the part most people underestimate. Because when you zoom out far enough, the difference between someone stuck at 30K and someone with 300K often isn't intelligence, luck, or talent. It's simply the ability to keep going after the excitement fades. So if you're somewhere in that range right now, 10K, 20K, maybe 40K, and progress feels slower than you expected, you're not doing it wrong. You're just in the middle. And the middle is where most people quit. But it's also where the people who eventually succeed quietly keep moving.